You ever notice how you can pay your credit card bill in full every single month on time, never carry a balance, never pay a cent of interest, and your credit score still doesn't move the way you'd expect? Sometimes it barely budges, sometimes it actually drops. Nobody really talks about this. You did everything you were told to do, you paid before the due date, you stayed responsible. And yet, the number that's supposed to reward all of that seems to be looking the other way. Something is happening between your wallet and your credit report that almost no one ever explains. And once you understand it, you'll never look at your credit card the same way again. Here's the part most people get wrong: the due date on your statement, the date you absolutely have to pay by to avoid late fees and interest charges, is not the date that matters most for your score. There's another date, one that almost never gets mentioned out loud, called the statement closing date. This is the day each month when your card issuer takes a snapshot of your balance and sends that number to the credit bureaus, the companies like Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion that collect your financial history and turn it into a score. Whatever your balance happens to be on that day is the number that travels out into the world. It doesn't matter that you paid it off 2 days later, the snapshot has already been taken. So, why does a single snapshot matter so much? Because of something called your credit utilization ratio. This is simply the percentage of your available credit that you're using at any given moment. If your credit limit is $1,000 and your balance is $300, your utilization is 30%. According to FICO, the company behind the credit scoring formula used by the vast majority of lenders in the country, utilization makes up roughly 30% of your overall score, second only to payment history. And here's the twist that changes everything: FICO doesn't see your average balance throughout the month. It doesn't see the zero you end up at after you pay in full. It sees whatever number was sitting there on your statement closing date, frozen in time. Think about how you actually use a credit card day to day. You swipe it for groceries on Monday, you swipe it for gas on Wednesday, a subscription renews on Friday. By the time your statement closes, your balance might look fairly high, even though you're fully planning to pay it off completely before the due date a few weeks later. Now, that high snapshot is the one that gets reported. Your utilization spikes for that reporting cycle, and your score can dip, even though, from where you're sitting, you never carried debt, never paid a dollar of interest, and never missed a single payment. Doesn't that feel a little backwards? The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has spent years studying exactly this kind of disconnect, the gap between what people believe their financial behavior communicates and what the system actually measures. Their research keeps circling back to the same theme. Most people believe that paying in full each month is the entire game. And when it comes to interest charges, it is. APR, or annual percentage rate, which is the yearly cost of borrowing money if you carry a balance, never touches you if you pay everything off. But utilization doesn't care about APR. It doesn't care about your intentions. It cares about timing, and timing is the one piece nobody walks you through when you get your first credit card. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Research from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which regularly tracks household debt and credit trends across the country, has shown that revolving credit balances, meaning the kind of debt that can carry over from month to month like credit cards, fluctuate constantly throughout the year. Spending climbs around the holidays, it dips afterward, it climbs again during back to school season, during summer travel, during anything that pulls money out of your routine. Your statement closing date can land right in the middle of one of these spikes, capturing your balance at its highest point purely because of where that date happens to fall on the calendar. Your score reacts to that snapshot, not to your habits across the year, not to your follow through a week later, just to that one frozen moment. So, what does this actually cost someone who doesn't know about it? Picture two people with identical incomes, identical spending habits, and identical bill paying behavior. The only difference between them is when, within their billing cycle, they happen to make extra payments toward their balance. One person pays a chunk of their balance down right before their statement closes. The other person, who feels just as responsible, pays the exact same amount but waits until closer to the due date, after the statement has already closed. To both of them, it feels like the same habit: pay it off, stay on top of it, don't carry debt. But their reported utilization numbers can look completely different. One might show up to the bureaus at 15% utilization, the other might show up at 60%. In a 60% utilization, even on a card that gets paid off in full every single month, can pull a credit score down by a meaningful amount, sometimes enough to shift the interest rate offered on a car loan. affect whether an apartment application gets a second look, or change the terms on a future credit card offer, all from a difference in timing that most people never think about, let alone notice. This connects to something the behavioral economist Richard Thaler has spent much of his career studying, an idea called mental accounting. Thaler's research shows that people don't experience money the way a spreadsheet does. People separate their money into different mental categories, like money that's already handled versus money that's still sitting in the account, even when financially it's the exact same dollar in the exact same place. Most cardholders mentally file their credit card spending as handled the moment they know they're going to pay it off. But the credit system doesn't operate on intention, it operates on snapshots. And that gap between how you think about your own money and how the system actually records it is exactly where this entire trap hides in plain sight. So, what can you actually do about this? The first step is the simplest. Find your statement closing date. It's printed on every credit card statement, usually listed a week or two before your due date, often in smaller print near the top of the page. Once you know that date, you can use it on purpose. If you make a payment, even a partial one, a few days before your statement closes, you lower the balance that gets reported that cycle, which lowers your utilization, which can help your score, even if you were always going to pay the full amount eventually anyway. You're not changing how much you spend. You're just changing when a portion of it gets paid. The second step is to think about utilization both per card and across all your cards combined. The bureaus look at both numbers. If you have multiple cards, spreading your spending so that no single card looks maxed out on its closing date, even temporarily, can make a real difference in how your overall profile reads. A common guideline is to try to keep utilization under 30% on each individual card, and ideally closer to 10% if you're getting ready for something big, like applying for a mortgage or refinancing a car loan, where every few points on your score can change the rate. You're offered. The third step is to build a second payment habit around this date instead of only around the due date. Most people set up automatic payments for the due date because that's the date that protects them from late fees. That part is important and shouldn't change, but you can add a second, smaller automatic payment time to land just a few days before your statement closes. This doesn't cost you anything extra over the course of the year. You're not paying more money in total. You're simply moving a portion of that payment earlier in the cycle, and that single shift in timing is what reshapes the snapshot that gets sent out. The fourth step takes the least effort of all, and it's really just a habit of awareness. If you know a big expense is coming, holiday shopping, a car repair, a flight for a trip, and it's going to land right before your statement closes, you can make a quick payment beforehand to soften that snapshot or temporarily shift that purchase to a different card with more breathing room. It takes 30 seconds of thinking ahead, and it can be the difference between your report showing 15% utilization or 60% utilization for that month. There's one more layer to this that's worth sitting with for a moment. Your credit report isn't updated in real time. It's updated in cycles, once per statement period, per card. That means at any given moment, the version of you that lenders are looking at could be weeks old. If you paid your card down to zero yesterday, but your statement closed 3 weeks ago at 60% utilization, that 60% is still the number sitting on your report right now. It will stay there until your next statement closes and reports a new figure. So if you're planning something big, a mortgage application, a car purchase, a new lease, the timing question isn't just about this month. It's about making sure your most recent statement closing date, the one currently on file, reflects a low balance, not just your balance today. It also helps to understand why the system is built this way in the first place. Lenders aren't trying to catch you off guard. They're trying to predict risk using a consistent, repeatable measurement, and a monthly snapshot is simply easier to standardize across hundreds of millions of accounts than tracking everyone's daily balance in real time. The problem isn't that the system is dishonest. The problem is that it was never explained to you in a way that connects to how you actually live and spend. Once you see the mechanism, it stops feeling like a hidden trap and starts feeling like a dial you can adjust. None of this changes how much money you're spending. None of this changes how much interest you're paying, because if you're paying in full, that number stays at zero either way. What changes is the picture the system sees of you, and that picture follows you far beyond your credit card. It shows up in mortgage applications, auto loan rates, credit card offers that land in your inbox, and sometimes even rental applications and certain job screenings that include a credit check. So the next time you swipe your card, pay your bill on time, Do everything you think you're supposed to do and watch your score barely move or dip for no obvious reason. You'll know exactly why. It was never really about whether you paid. It was about when the system happened to be looking. And now that you know when it's looking, you get to decide what it sees.